Hello everyone. How are you? This is Tinuke Fawele. I welcome you to today's edition. Um, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are watching from. I'm so happy to have you all here today. So our topic today is mother-in-law challenge. Again, I thank you for watching. If you're watching, please say something so that I'll know, okay, that someone is watching. All right, so thank you, welcome. So we're talking about mother-in-law challenge. So of course, if you have a child that's married, then you are a mother-in-law. And when your child gets married, you really want to gain a son or a daughter. You don't want to lose one. And we know that there's a problem with mother-in-law, daughter-in-law that we all know about. I'm sure you know someone in your family. You yourself might be going through it that's having these problems. But we're doing this today because we want this narrative to change. We want to begin having this discussion. So this is a discussion. So I welcome you. Good afternoon. I welcome you to put things in the chat. If you have advice that you have used in your own situation, if you have a good mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship, we want to hear about it so other people can learn. If you have challenges, you can put it on there so people also can give their own advice. So we really want to be in this discussion and we want this to change because, if your son gets married, is still your son and you want to forever be in your son's life and with his family. And there's no point just being in this relationship and being unhappy. So we want to know how we can do it so that we are all one big happy family. Well, the interesting thing is that we don't hear much about fathers and their in-laws and any problem. We don't hear about that. We don't hear about sons-in-law and even their mothers-in-law. The most critical ones, one where we have the most issues are the ones with mothers-in-law and their daughters-in-laws, the daughters that have married their sons. So that is the one that we will concentrate on, and I'm sure all other in-law relationships can also take a leaf from that. So I read a book that really impacted me and really informed this video that I'm doing. It's by a lady named DeArmour, and I'm going to write it in the chat when we finish. The title of the book is Related by Chance, Family by Choice, Transforming Mother-in-law and Daughter-in-law Relationships. So she told a story in the book. So she was at a Christian women retreat. And one woman came up to her and said, I'm rooming with your 3 daughters-in-law. And I just can't believe what I'm seeing. They not only like you, they actually love you. They're actually crazy about you. What did you do? And she said, tell me your secrets. And the woman was first like, I don't even know you. What are you asking? What is your secret? So the woman proceeded to ask the inquirer. She said, so tell me about your daughter-in-law. Oh, she said, my daughter-in-law, she's lazy. She's no good. She's not a good cook. She's not a good housekeeper. She just doesn't know anything. She's a spoiled child and all of that. And then the woman asked, how about her mom? And she said, oh, she didn't have much of a mom. Her mom is a drug addict and they don't have a relationship. She was passed from house to house when she was growing up. And this woman looked at the woman that was making this complaint and said, you need to ask for forgiveness. The woman said, me? Ask her for forgiveness? She said, her second. But you need to ask God for forgiveness first. She said, because you have a woman who didn't have much of a childhood, a woman who is actually broken from all the experiences that she's been through. And God placed her in your path. And this is what you do. And I really thought about that. I was like, wow. So sometimes when we have daughters-in-law, it may be that God actually placed that person in our path. Maybe that person needs a mother like you. You don't know that, but many times we don't see it that way. And that was very impactful to me. And that's why I wanted to talk about this and, plus all the problems that we see. So what's the issue with women? I think that because we are more emotional and our feelings get hurt more quickly, maybe that's why we have issues with mothers-in-law. We don't hear much about fathers-in-law. As a matter of fact, many women that have issues with their mothers-in-law actually don't have any problems with their fathers-in-law at all. So So I think that has to do with who we are and maybe the relationships that we have with our son. And another thing, and Deb also alluded to that in her book, she said sometimes in our minds as women, we are ready to release our daughters for marriage. In fact, we're already preparing them for marriage since they were little. We buy them, maybe cooking things. We teach them how to cook. We teach them how to be homemakers because we are thinking in our heads, you are going out one day and you are going to be married to someone. So we're ready that they are leaving us. For our sons, we don't think that way oftentimes. We think about it as if we're bringing a woman home. A woman is coming to us. So in our minds, that son is not leaving. He's here and someone is coming. That's the way we see it. But that's actually not true. When we go to the Bible, Genesis 2:24, the Bible says, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they will become one flesh. So it's actually the man that leaves. So we must know that, no matter what we think about in our culture, the man is also leaving. The man is leaving his parents, and we need to see it that way. And Jesus repeated the same thing in Matthew 19:5, that a man leaves. So it's not only the woman that leaves, it's everyone that leaves. Of course, it takes three to tango. When we're talking about in-law issues, you know that the mother has something to do, the wife has something to do, and the husband has something to do. For everything to go well, all three really need to be involved, and all the three need to play their part. But I'm going to start with mothers-in-law. Any mother wants happiness for her son. So you want your son to be happy. If you want your son to be happy, you got to be able to support your son's family, which includes his wife, obviously. We also always have to remember that as mothers, we didn't raise the wife. If you have a son and your son gets married, remember that you did not raise that woman. That woman has been raised by someone else. Remember that you yourself are not perfect. And so having all these in mind, we need to manage our expectations. So even for women whose children are not married yet, even when your children are young, you can now begin to prepare your sons. You can begin to pray for your son's wife, for whoever that wife is going to be. You can begin to pray about that now. You can begin to allow your sons, even from a very young age, to be independent in making their own decisions. Not to always come back to you and check with you. Help them to make their decisions so that when they grow older and they have decisions that they're making with their wives, you don't come in and, make your own opinion and then they change it, because it happens. A lot of women complain that, my husband and I have already agreed that this is what is going to happen. And then his mom comes in, says something contrary, and he's not able to say no to his mom, and then he just changes everything that we've done. That is not good. So we need to already release our sons to be able to make their own decisions. And then please release him. Release your son. Release him. He's supposed to leave you and go be married to someone else. And if you've raised your son to be an adult, and this is just the case for all our relationship with our adult children, regardless of whether they are married or not, it comes to a time where you just have to let go and just pray. And you know what? If they make their own mistakes, if they fail, that's okay. Many of us, especially in African culture, it's like there's no room for failure. There's no room for failure at school. There's no room for failure in your relationships. And so even when our children are having problems in their relationships, they can't come to us because they're supposed to make it work. Everything is supposed to be perfect and successful with them. So if they grow up and they make mistakes, they make financial mistakes, that's okay. Dave Ramsey, my favorite financial guru, he actually went bankrupt and went down to the bottom before he got up and became the guru that he is today, became the billionaire that he is today. So it's okay to fail. So we don't want to micromanage their lives, including even micromanaging their relationships, their marital relationships. Treat your son's wife as family. Treat her as you are treating your own son. That's just fair. Don't give your counsel except when asked. And this is so difficult. Even for me, it's very difficult not to give your opinion about things, but we really, really need to try. And if you give your opinion, just leave it at that. Don't insist that your way be done. I look at my grandson and I think about the fact that when my children were growing up, I only knew about juice and that's what they had. But now I know about smoothie. I know that you can actually blend just regular fruits and vegetables, and they can be very, very tasty and very, very healthy. And I'm really hoping and wishing that this is what, my daughter and her husband would give to my grandson. But, I'm not the parent of my grandson, so I can only hope and pray and, maybe make some suggestions. But we have so many wonderful ideas that we want for our grandchildren, but we cannot take over. We cannot give counsel unless we are asked. And that comes with respect. There has to be mutual respect. Unfortunately, in some homes, it wasn't the culture that there was mutual respect. The culture was only the children respected the parents. The parents could just talk to the children anyhow, and they didn't have any boundaries and all of that. And if that's the relationship you have with your son, it's going to be difficult when he gets married, because you are used to giving the orders and everything you say goes, and he doesn't have an opinion. If that's the relationship, it's going to be very hard. But you have to know that even if that is what it was, you have to really keep away. You have to give respect. And part of the way you can show your respect, if you find yourself in your in-laws' home, is to really ask them, how do you do this and that, especially in your son's home. Now, in your daughter's home, I can see where it's not much of a problem. So I raise my daughter. She probably does little things like I do. She probably cooks like I do. She does many things. She might have learned her own ways, but, most of the time, she knows what I want. There wouldn't be that conflict. But you don't know your son's wife that way. So it's a good thing to ask if you find yourself in their home, how do you like things being done? How do you like this? How do you do this? So that they know that you are actually here to support, not to bring your own ideas and lord it over them. I think a daughter-in-law will appreciate the fact that you are asking, how do you want me to do this? And things like that. And on the part of the daughter-in-law, we're also going to talk about it. She also can initiate that, and say that, this is what we request that you do with our sons. We don't give him candies. We don't do this and that. And we need to respect those boundaries. We need to respect the boundaries when we get to our sons and his wife's home. We need to respect the boundaries. Very, very important. There needs to be open communication. Many times we jump to conclusion and we don't know. A friend of mine gave an example, and I'm sorry I didn't know that I was going to say this. I will have asked, if I could share this, but I'm sure she wouldn't mind. So she said that, her mother-in-law was with her for a while and she traveled out of town. And then she found out that when she came back, the mother-in-law had moved things around in the kitchen. And first of all, she was upset, like, why will she? Why can't she just leave things as I did? And she wanted to say something, but she exercised restraint and didn't say anything. And then she decided just to watch the mother-in-law in the kitchen when she came. And she found out that the decision that the mother-in-law made to rearrange things was really because it was because of height. The mother-in-law was shorter than my friend who is tall. And so the mother-in-law rearranged things just so she could operate with her height. And, my friend said, oh my goodness, I just felt so happy that I didn't just jump ahead and say something. And I think that's the restraint that we need to have a lot of times. Let's not jump to conclusion that she's doing that because she's my mother-in-law. She just wants to upset me and all of that. I think it goes a long way when we show that restraint. So open communication, even when you have to say something, just say it in a non-judgmental way, in just a way that just assumes the best. When you have that open communication, assume the best. Be considerate. As mothers-in-law, we have to be considerate. I remember, I was blessed to have a wonderful mother-in-law. So I remember I was working nights, and when I came back in the morning, she would say, go to sleep, don't worry about anything. And she would, in fact, take care of everything before I woke up. She would let me sleep. That's being considerate, because that's what she would do for her daughter. So anything that we will do for our daughter, anything that we would do to make the lives of our daughters comfortable, let's do the same for our daughters-in-law. After all, if our sons are happy, then we are happy. So let's do that. And I also remember that my mother-in-law would pray for me. So many times she would pray for me. She will assure me that my son, I have one son and three daughters. She will assure me that my son, that the wife that will marry my son will be loving to me and will just be perfect for my son. She would say all these prayers, because she was appreciating what I was doing. So these are all the things that we can do. And as daughters-in-law, like I said, have a conversation about boundaries. Have a respectful conversation, not say, these are the rules and all of that. Just, say, this is what we request that you do. This is how we do things. And we will understand if you do that too. And also just be understanding. Remember that I'm sure you have conflicts with your own mother. And you don't condemn your mother. You don't say, my mom, I don't ever want to see you. I don't want you to come back to my house just because you have a conflict. When we think about this, let's just think about our mothers also and what they could go through. And let's just be considerate even of our mothers-in-law. A friend of mine also gave an example about her mother-in-law and how she would do things sometimes that would not be the way she would have done it. But if it's not something that is life or death or something, sometimes she wouldn't even complain. Sometimes if she's able to go back and redo the things that the mother-in-law wouldn't even know that she has done that, she would. And that is a lot of wisdom. And I also remember one time that I was growing up and a woman was having trouble with her mother-in-law. And my mom was counseling the mom and this woman. And she said, no matter what it is, I think it was even something about the fact that the wife did not want her mother-in-law to give a bath to her son. And so the issue came to my mom. And my mom said, you know what? This mother that you don't want to give your son a bath actually gave birth to your husband and raised him. And if she didn't raise him to be who he is, you would not have picked him. And I think we forget that a lot of times. We want to condemn the mother-in-law and all of this. We want to say she's not good enough. We want to say she doesn't know how to do this. But she raised that son to the point that you found him a desirable man to marry. She did the work. So let's forget that. My mother-in-law once told me a story of where she was at a gathering and she overheard these women talking and say, when I get married, I don't want to have a mother-in-law because I don't want any trouble. I'm going to marry a man who doesn't have a mother. And so my mother-in-law said, she went to them and she said, okay, when you get married, ladies, do you want to have sons? And they said, yeah, we want to have sons. She said, when you have those sons, where are you going to be? Where would you be? And the girls were like, please don't curse us, don't curse us. My mother-in-law said, well, if you are praying to have a son who doesn't have a mother, whose mother is dead, when you have a son, where do you think you should be? And many times we don't think about things like that. If you're praying to have a son, a husband who doesn't have a mother, whose mother is dead, do you want to be dead when your own son gets married? So I think if we are just considerate and we think about these things more, knowing that even if you're a daughter-in-law today, tomorrow you will be a mother-in-law, then we can decide we can know what to do and be considerate. I also have the example of a friend who married into this family where she actually knew a couple of the daughters-in-law and they did not get along with this mother-in-law. And they told her how horrible this mother was and all of that. But she was a woman of wisdom. She went in, she said, I went into that marriage with this in my mind. I will form a relationship with this woman. She said, because this is my mother-in-law. I don't have a choice. She's forever going to be my husband's mom. She's going to be my children's grandmother. So she went in with intention. I'm going to be her friend. And you know what she did? She would pick up the phone, whether her husband was home or not. She would pick up the phone, talk to the mother-in-law, ask about her welfare. From the interaction, she kind of found out what her love language was. Her love language was receiving gifts. So ever so often, people that have receiving gifts as their love language, it doesn't have to be an expensive gift. It's just that someone thought about them and gave it to them. So ever so often, whenever she had a chance, she'll buy a little something, give to her. She continued that. She continued. The mother-in-law would not necessarily initiate a call, but she will always initiate a call. And, I see this as issues sometimes between couples. Some people will say, she never calls my parents unless I'm talking to them and then she comes in. But this woman decided, I'm going to form a relationship. Today, that mother-in-law and this woman are best of friends. In fact, sometimes these mothers' daughters will say that their mom is closer to this daughter-in-law than she is to them. That is a clear example of how the same mother-in-law can be a different person depending on who the daughter-in-law is. I challenge you as a daughter-in-law to make sure that you are going to try your best so that your mother-in-law will be who you actually want her to be. Now, let's deal with situations where maybe there are serious, like high tension issues. The advice that I've had and that I used in my own situation is that if it's going to be like a high tension issue, let the child of the mother do the talking. For instance, when my mother-in-law was with us, if I saw anything that my mother-in-law was doing that I didn't like, I would tell my husband. And in wisdom, my husband would not just go and tell my mother-in-law, oh, Tinuke said this. He will wait and watch to see that behavior. Then when he saw it, he will now address it with his mom. And that's how everything went. So that she didn't see that Tinuke was complaining. Her son was just telling her. And it came to the time when I became so comfortable with my mother-in-law that I didn't need my husband to be a go-between. I could just speak to her directly. But before that happens, know that for the most part, that mother is going to receive correction better from her own child because she's been with this child forever. She raised this child. They've gone through different things together. It's just going to be easy for the child to speak to the mom. So let's do that. And, especially for men, you just have to have a backbone. You have to have a backbone. You have to be able to speak to your mother, especially if your mother is going to come into your space. You have to be bold enough, humble enough. Obviously, always honor your mother. Always, 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 always honor your mother. But you can tell your mother the truth. The fact is that, the woman's parents have their own home. The man's parents have their own home. The home that you are building is a whole different brand by itself. And what husband and wife needs to do is to take the good things from each family and leave the bad things out because each family has those. So take the good from each family and bring them together and you're forming something different. And so sometimes when the mothers-in-law come in, they are trying to impose something that probably you want to drop because it is not a good practice. And you should be able to stand your ground. And like I said, the person who is the child of the mother should be the one to bring it first to say that, this is what we have decided to do. I have some examples of my own too. I remember one time that I was working nights when my mother-in-law was with us. And at first, I guess she just didn't want to take over. She didn't want to be forward and go to my kitchen. So she'll be waiting for me to wake up. And then when I woke up, the first thing I would do would be to cook for her. And my husband told her one day, he said, Mama, the kitchen is yours. Tinuke doesn't mind. If she's sleeping, if she's not available, just go ahead and cook. And, make yourself comfortable, cook for yourself and eat and don't wait on her. And that was very, very liberating for me because then she could just take care of herself, without waiting on me. And so that's a lot of ways that men can help. Sometimes when things have gone sour, the sons in the relationship, the man, the husband, will be the one that can really do a go-between. Because some people will be watching this and say, you know what? It's over for me. I already have a bad relationship with my mother-in-law and I don't know what I can do about it. I already have a bad relationship with my daughter-in-law. In this way, it's almost always the husband that can break that can just be a good go-between and that can bring a resolution. But if you're a man who has been weak, when you get to your wife, you say, well, please, don't mind my mother. Everybody knows her, she will never change. And then you get to your mom and say, oh, don't mind my wife, she's just whatever. You are not letting each party see what they are doing wrong and they are not going to change. So as the man, you will need to be able to honestly see what your mother is doing and tell her what she's doing that is causing problems. And then you should be able to tell your wife what she's doing. I remember one time, in as much as I tried to take care of my mother-in-law, there are lapses that will always happen in any situation. So I remember one particular evening, we had all gone out, we came back. I think we had lunch somewhere and we came back home. And I think for me at that time, I didn't need any more food that night. But I forgot that my mother-in-law will always also eat, at the end of the day. And I just went upstairs and jumped on my bed. And I think my husband observed my mother-in-law, checking to see what she was going to eat, opening cabinets and stuff and opening the fridge. And my husband came up to meet me and said, I don't remember exactly how he said it, but he actually said it in a way that really surprised me. Like, he was really kind about it. It was like really humble about it. I think he just thought about the fact that, this woman has always taken care of my mother. So he said something to the effect of, Dao, Mama is looking for what she will eat, looking around, can you, make sure that she gets something to eat. I don't remember how he said it, but he said it in a way that I was actually convicted. I actually felt bad that, wow, why did I do this to my mother-in-law? Why did I leave her to be looking for what she's going to eat? That means there wasn't even any leftover that she could easily warm up. Like, it was difficult for her because there wasn't anything. So I felt bad and I went downstairs. But if my husband had come charging at me, scolding me, like, why didn't you cook for my mom or whatever, that would have irritated me and that would have made me have an attitude. But he said it in a way. So as men, we just have to pray for the wisdom of God to just help us to be able to help you. I'm not a man. To be able to help you to be able to be a good go-between. Now, this woman that I talked about, Deb, she says sometimes people will say, she will hear women say, well, that's not who I wanted for my son. And then she says she will tell them, you raised him, and the man you raised, that's who he picked. So I don't know what to say about how you raised him. And she said she would tell them, if you want to stay present in your son's life and in his family's life, then you have a chance, you have a choice to make. Now, she said something, and I'm going to read her quote. She said, don't ever make your son choose between you and his wife. She said, because if you make him choose and you've raised him right, he will choose his wife, and that will break your heart. But if he chooses you, it will break God's heart and perhaps his marriage. I'm going to say that again. If you make your son choose and you've raised him right, he will choose his wife. Because that is the plan that God said, man, leave your parents, cleave to your wife. So if he's going to follow the Bible instructions, he's actually going to choose his wife if you make him choose. What's that going to do? That's going to break your heart. Now, if he's a mama's boy and he decides to ignore the Bible and choose you, the mother, over his wife, it will break God's heart because he's going completely opposite of what God said. And of course, that marriage is going to break. If you choose your mother over your wife, the marriage to your wife is going to break. So don't make your son choose. Just know that you are there to support them both. You are there to know your boundaries. This is not your home. And I think that's another mistake, especially as Africans. That's another mistake we make. When your son gets married, again, because you are bringing the wife home, you really think that's your home. Even when it is a home that your son and his wife only have built, you still think it's your home. You think you have a right in that home, but you don't. You don't. That home belongs to the man and his wife, and you are a guest that you are supposed to follow the rules of the home. But it can really be a win-win situation. You don't have to tread on eggshells. You can really have a wonderful time and be the support that you need to be. If you can just look at the woman as though she's your daughter, and all the support that you give to your daughter, the daughter will appreciate it. Now, when trouble has happened, Debbie also has advice that, prayerfully, when you pray about it and you think about everything that's happening and you really think about your son, as a mother-in-law, you can actually go to your daughter-in-law. And the daughter-in-law can also initiate, whoever has the grace. This can be initiated by either the mother-in-law or the daughter-in-law when things have gone awry. You can say, I know we haven't gotten along till now, but God is tugging at my heart and I'm willing to take the first step to improve it. What about you? Are you willing to do the same with me? So if you are watching me today and you're already having trouble with your in-laws, pray that God will just soften your heart. I know that sometimes the heart is a lot and it's really gone bad. You can still pray that God will soften your heart, that God will put love in your heart, God will put forgiveness in your heart. Forgiveness is always an option and is always a choice. You can choose to forgive with the help of God. Sometimes we need the help of God to even have the heart to forgive. Sometimes we don't feel like forgiving because we have been hurt so badly. But you can ask God to help you forgive. And then in that mode, you can, in humility, go to either your daughter-in-law. If you're a mother and you are doing that to your daughter-in-law, it's because you want your son's happiness. Because trust me, no man can be truly happy when he knows that his mom and his wife don't get along, because it's just going to take some things away. There are some things he's not going to be able to do. There are some places he's not going to be able to be because of that problem. You can just know that your son is not altogether happy because you are not getting along with his wife. So in humility, you can do that because of the love you have for your son. You can humble yourself to speak to his wife. And you as the daughter-in-law, you can do the same. Because of the love you have for your husband, you can do the same because you truly don't want him to be, just separated from his mother. You don't want that. They formed that relationship ever before you came along. They formed this bond, this mother and son bond. You shouldn't come in and destroy that. So in humility, because of that, you can be the one to go to your mother-in-law and say, I know we haven't gotten along, and I take responsibility for whatever it is I've done, and you can own up to that. But I'm willing to take a first step in resolving this so that we all can be happy. Can you join me in doing that? And after you've done that, if someone is still adamant, just keep praying and keep showing love. Love is a universal language that everyone understands, and love is more powerful than hate. I'll say that again. Love is more powerful than hate. So just keep loving. Just keep praying that God will give you this love so that you can love your mother-in-law and you can love your daughter-in-law. Alrighty. Thank you for watching. Let me see if there are any comments or any questions. I hope we have questions. I hope we have suggestions. Well, maybe when people begin to watch later. But thank you all for all of you who are watching. I hope this has been helpful. And I welcome your comments and your suggestions and your questions. So maybe we can also have more discussions in the future. So thank you very much. God bless and see you next time.